All right, real quick, just to show people how to maneuver around in Blender if you're new to Blender. This will help you out in future projects, hopefully. You have your viewport in the center. You have your timeline down at the bottom. This is for animation. Unless you're doing animation, you don't need this section, so you can just grab this arrow. Any of these sections that you see, you can hover over the black line between them to move them. Now, if you want to, say, add a new section, you can do that by grabbing the little target in the corner between the line, and you can drag it out to get a new section, and then you can change whatever you use inside of this section if you wanted. So you could choose different menus and things to affect different things in different ways inside of Blender, but this is more advanced, setting up different viewports and things. So if I wanted a camera here, I could set up a separate camera, but that's how you do that. And then normally you wouldn't want to change anything. So if you want to return to the default, I would just open a new general one, and now we're back to our default setting. And then if you want to hide or open these tools right here on the top, you have this like little arrow. You can drag this out and you see you have your tool view, and you might have this or you might not. Then you have your viewport control, so you can rotate around with these, or you can just hit middle mouse to orbit around. So on your mouse, you select middle mouse to orbit around, and then you hold shift middle mouse to move left and right, and then control middle mouse to zoom in and out with up and down, like dragging your mouse up and down. So if I middle mouse and move the mouse, like I hold middle mouse and move, I orbit. If I hold shift and middle mouse, I drag the mouse, and going left and right, I drag the viewport. And same thing with control, except if I go up and down with middle mouse held down, so control middle mouse and up and down, I can zoom in and out. Now, how do we actually create objects? You have object mode, and here we can add mesh cube. We can also add other things like a plane if we wanted, and then you can see there are different styles of objects. Generally, everything starts with a cube or a sphere, but you can use different things if need be. It's all up to you. So here I'll add a sphere. Where's that? It's not a circle, it's a UV sphere. So here we have a sphere. These are your standard ones. Now, if I want to delete an object, I can just select it and hit delete on the keyboard. Same thing for a plane. And then if I want to move the object, if I don't have a manipulator here, if I have just the selection tool up top right here, if I select it and then I select the move tool, I can use the manipulator to move with the arrows in specific directions. This is important to control where you place the object. You can rotate in specific directions as well, and you can rotate from the center to rotate in all directions, or you can control how you rotate the object as well. And same for scaling. You can scale in specific directions, or you can scale in this direction, or in all directions by grabbing the outer circle or the inner circle and scaling. So that's how the manipulators work. But if we wanted to, say, change this object into something that's not just a primitive shape, like not just one of these shapes we see here, what we can do is go into edit mode. So we can select this object, go to edit mode, so object mode, edit. And now we have three different modes inside of here. We have vertice, edge, and face. Again, that's vertice, or the dots on the edges. And then we have edge and face. So if I select vertice, you can see here, I can move a vertice, changing the shape drastically. However, I can't really rotate an individual vertice or scale an individual vertice. That's not too important, but it's good to know that if you only have one vertice selected, it won't do that. However, it will do scaling if you have more than one vertice selected. And you can add to the selection with shift, and you can take away from the selection with shift as well. And then you continue manipulating or changing the vertices how you see fit. Now we also have the edge mode, which is if I wanted to, say, grab an edge and affect an edge overall and not just one vertice or separate vertices, I could do that. And I could also move it, and I could rotate it as well, creating whatever design I feel like. And then lastly, you could do the same thing with faces. So you can grab whole faces and you can rotate those as well, scale them as well, and your manipulators are right here. And you can also move them as well. So it's all dependent on what you're trying to do. You need to do that. You need to be able to affect these different things to change the shape of the object. Now, if you go further and add more tools down below, you can grab a face, and then if I wanted to change the shape of this to like a box that I could put things in, I could effectively grab this face on top and use the inset faces, which looks like a little square with a hole in it. You select that and you drag in a little bit, and it's going to create new faces from the outside. And then right above that, you have extrude. You can select that and grab this plus sign and push in. And if you push too far in, it'll come out the bottom. So you want to push down until you see roughly the bottom, but you don't want to go through the bottom. And that would create a box that you could put things in if you wanted. You could also add more information by going to the edge loop tool right here, and you could click and drag to place an edge loop where you want. And by adding more information, I can then alter the shape of the object more drastically. So I clicked in a few edge loops here. And now if I wanted to, I could grab a new face, like I could grab this face and extrude it outward using the extrude tool, now creating a more unique object. And if I wanted to, say, change this, I could grab this edge, and then I could move this out. And now we've created kind of like a spike coming out of this as well. And that's just pretty much how you move and start modeling inside of Blender. Also, you have another section in Blender, just to go over real quick. If you create something in Blender, this outliner that's standard in your layout tab is going to tell you everything in the scene. And then you have your different layouts up here. They're designed to work with a certain type of workflow. So if you're in your normal layout, this is just like modeling and placing objects. You also have modeling here as well, which gets rid of the timeline. Sculpting is more like clay or shaping the object, there's more that you have to do to set this up. UV editing is more about setting up your texture space, and then texturing is about texturing the object. Shading is about setting up how the object looks with shaders. Animation, that's pretty clear. Rendering is like how you create videos or images and sequences to create videos. And compositing is how you can place things together to create in separate scenes and separate videos to make a timeline of videos, and then you can render that out. So those are the different tabs, and then whatever's inside your scene will be over here in your outliner. And then below your outliner, you have your settings for everything. So this object, when I select this object, if I select the square right here, the object properties, I can move this with just the math in these properties as well, because this controls the object. This is the settings of the object. So when we're jumping through these settings over here, we're effectively changing how the object inside or objects in the scene are using settings to do different things. So like here, I could add a material in the materials section, and then if I change the color and I swap to where you can see the color, now you can actually see the color. And if you can't see the color, you're on standard render up top right over here. And if you lose your manipulator, like if you select an object and you select the manipulator and your manipulator's gone, you need to turn this on right here, show gizmo. And if you can't see your grid, that's the 2 circles. And if you see this, that's wireframe. So you can turn this off by going 1 over to your normal view or your normal shading view. Then right here, you have your viewport coloring or your materials. And then you have your viewport materials with lights. In order to see lights, you would have to add a light in the scene. So here I could add a point light, and I can move it up, and you can see now we have lights in the scene. So those are the settings for that. And then what else? Is there anything else to cover in here? Oh yeah, if you need to do this as well, it's useful at times. So if you're modeling and you need to see, say, from this side, if you select directly on the axis up here, you can snap exactly to the side of the object. So that way you can model the object from specific sides if you want. That's useful when you're doing very detailed work. And then to get out of that, you just hold middle mouse to orbit and you go back to perspective view. So that's generally how Blender is used. And yeah, hope you enjoy Blender and have fun making things. And hopefully that wasn't too horrible to figure out. All right, one more thing. If you're in Blender and you want to save your object for some reason, or you want to save your scene, what you can do is you can go to File, Save As, and you save your asset wherever you need to save it. So in this case, I would name it, so I'd say like, I don't know, blocks, because it's blocks in the scene. And then I'd want to actually place this object into a folder that I know where it's going to be. So I'd probably make a new folder. So in my downloads, I could right click and make a new folder and say blocks. And then inside of the blocks folder, I have blocks and I could save it. Now let's say for some reason I had textured my object. So assuming I have an object here and I take the object and join it together, and then you've saved it already. So if we check, we can go File, Save As. We can see here we saved it. And we can make sure we add our textures to our save as well. So if we had textured our object, we can go to UV and we can add a new UV to this. And we can just say block UV and hit new image. Now we have this new UV here. We can say unwrap smart UV. So we change the UVs here. And then the next step would be to go to texture paint. And then after going to texture paint, you can go up to the top and right here, you can select texture slot, +, base color, and you can add it. So now we've added this texture slot and we can begin painting onto our object to create a new material or a new texture within Blender. And you can change your settings for your brush up top right here if you don't know how to do this. And you can also change the colors over here to color in on objects and effectively texture them within Blender. And then once you have your object completely textured, you can see now we've started adding everything to this. It's taken a completely different look or form than what we had before. We want to save this. You wouldn't want to lose your work if you had colored everything. So in order to do that, inside of the texture paint section, you can go to image over here and you go to save as. And right here, you'll notice we're inside our blocks folder. If you're not inside your blocks folder, you would just go to it. So I put it in my downloads blocks and you can see here cube 2 base color PNG. I could rename this if I wanted to like blocks.png and hit save. So now it saved it and I have that information stored. So when I want to add it back in, I could. So once you saved your file out and you went up here to image and saved your image, so now you have your PNG or your whatever you called it up here, you're good to go. And you just want to make sure you resave your project with that as well. So when we turn this on, you'll have your project, save as blocks, save. And now when we open, so if I change where we're at in here and I open this and I reopen the blocks, you'll see it loads where we saved it and we have our textures and everything like that. So that's how you save textures as well. You don't want to do a lot of work and then not save your project and not save your textures. So hopefully that helps you understand how to save and how to texture. And the final thing is just knowing how to open it. So you'd go File, Open when you're in Blender to reopen whatever project you want to open. And you would just path to it and then open it up. And yeah, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it helps you move around in Blender and understand it a little bit better.